Most people in life are looking for how do I make a life worth living and a retirement worth having. I say this regularly in my audio casts, and yet there's some immoral person that keeps editing my videos. It's very frustrating to me because I have not authorized one person, even the owners of YouTube, to edit my intellectual property. When I'm talking about intellectual property, people don't necessarily automatically know what that means if they're not someone who works in the creative services industries. What that means is that there is an intellectual property right law. What that says is that what I have created belongs to me. It applies to all creative work that has a copyright officially and unofficially. The copyright law applies to photographs, videos, creative arts, theatrical productions, movies, etc. Intellectual property applies to all sorts of creative things from all kinds of industries. But what it means is that I have created this content and you may not use it without my written express permission. It also means that if you lied and stole my signature and tried to imply that I gave you permission to utilize it, that you could be facing federal time, prosecutorial time, if you will, and federal governments, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, takes that seriously most of the time. The reason is because someone who's willing to steal intellectual property is willing to sell those secrets to someone else. This is called espionage. We see this in films throughout our movie industry where they're showing someone, usually in the MI6 or the MIA or whatever it is called, trying to save a disk, trying to save a virus, trying to protect the world. Isn't it interesting that a few years ago Tom Cruise did a film about trying to save the world from a virus being let loose? Isn't it interesting that Hollywood gets way in advance information on technologies that are facing our land? I often cite The Kingsman, the first film where Samuel Jackson plays a very psychotic man who wants to use cell phones to take over the minds of people. What we know from studying science and animals and technology is that there is an inaudible area. Music business has known this for centuries, probably since its inception, or at least since the 70s and 80s when rock music and heavy metal was putting backward masking in records and in 8-tracks and in, of course, every version that has come forward since then. We also know from the music industry that and the study of it that there is a certain musical pattern. They even talk about it publicly in Japan, in Japanese, on news shows, that there's an actual musical pattern that if you play for people, the popularity of the music is much higher than others. Isn't that interesting that we know all this about science and yet people in general are dumb about the world? Now, when I say this, I mean we are not studying foreign cultures very well because of two reasons. One, the foreign cultural people don't want us to know all their secrets so that they can prove they're powerful in the land. And two, we are often lazy to go after the languages that we need to learn most to protect our lives. The infidels are definitely here within our communities. They are lying, they are stealing, they are feeding us now, and we don't always recognize it. You can pretty much tell who's a foreigner in the local shops. It's usually a female who is working for either her family or working for her own life, her own college education. That is usually who is employed in the retail space. I can't say that every man who's in the retail space who has a better grasp of the English language but still a latent accent is not here lawfully. We don't have enough homeland security is absolute truth. We don't have enough people preaching the gospel correctly is absolute truth. When we go into churches, it is unbelievable the number of elders who will ill-willed welcome a new visitor. They automatically take the stance of who is this person? Why are they here? They don't look like us. I don't think I want them to become dear, and I'm going to violate their rights by distracting them in conversation so that I can look in their bags, their travel packages, or anything they are carrying upon them, looking in their jacket pockets. I have visited numerous small churches looking for a house of worship who speaks on God in a unique way. And each time I've been there, I have found that someone has ill willed come into that space and violated my travel bags. As a man who lost his vehicle due to the crimes against him by law enforcement and other liars, I lost the right to leave my property in my car. But here's the rub. Even when I left my property in my car, someone was illegally, constantly getting into my bags and taking the tools that I set aside for my life. When I say this, people say, no, that's not possible. And I want you to know it's exceptionally possible. That most car manufacturers don't make multiple keys, they make a handful. And then they use automatic programming, with now our cell phones can utilize, if you've ever seen a rental car or a borrowed car or an electric car, that they can utilize to unlock our cars. In life, we have moments of time to say